Thank you very much, Carol. I would like to now welcome Rabbi Dan Selsberg to introduce Wendy Schneider.
Thank you. Mazel tov, Susan, Carol, Lorraine. I was hoping Avi would have left his speech up here. Let's go with what I have. Sometimes, people who run shuls set out to look for a rabbi. This can involve going to a series of interviews in New York with graduating rabbinical students, 45 minutes per candidate, and each interview has anxious individuals on both sides of the table. If ever there were a situation that calls for tact, I haven't told any jokes yet, why are they laughing? If ever there were a situation that calls for tact, carefully chosen words, and a poker face, this is it. And who better to handle a situation fraught with sensitive social politics than Wendy Schneider. So it turns out, maybe anyone would have been better. John recalls the pain as the minutes slowly ticked by, and Wendy, having made a decision about a particular candidate's worth, shut down in the first minute or two of an interview, leaving him to carry the next 44 minutes. And they went home all but empty-handed. It is, as most of you know, vintage Wendy. Sharp, insightful, bold, more concerned with doing something right than the social niceties surrounding it, and almost in spite of herself, she's in the center of a situation that only people who really care, only people who stick their neck out, would even be in the first place. Wendy somehow acts as if she doesn't care, even though she cares quite a bit. She didn't care about the shul until she stepped up and helped run it for years, and truth be told, she never has really stepped back. No detail is too small for her attention, and no vision too big. Our remodeling would never have happened without her. She headed up our striking 125th anniversary celebration, and the moving presentation and gorgeous book were conceived by her. Wendy was indispensable in recovering the old Hunter Street Shul's stained glass, acquiring it for Beth Jacob, overseeing its restoration, and installing the lovely windows that her great-grandfather, one of her predecessors as president of Beth Jacob, dedicated to his wife and Wendy's namesake. She is the editor and primary force behind the Hamilton Jewish News, print and digital. She is an excellent writer and skilled photographer. She is computer savvy and culturally engaged. She is active, always in motion, in foot or on a bike, in Dundas or in even more exotic locales, alone or with Lori at her side. She's always in motion until yoga somehow slows her down. Wendy is a devoted daughter, sister, mother, wife, and friend, but she wears none of those titles with a hint of the syrupy sweetness one sometimes expects. Wendy is not in for nostalgia or cheap sentiment. She is in for real emotion, real experience, and truth, not warmed over platitudes that sound nice but ultimately mean little. She doesn't say it if she doesn't mean it. That's part of why that scene of Wendy not playing by the social rules at the Jewish Theological Seminary interview rooms are so great. She never saw herself as a shul person, but she reads the longest Haftarot of the year, including Yonah and Yom Kippur afternoon. She is our go-to Kabbalat Shabbat leader for services on Friday night. She reads Torah, she edits the shul bulletin and weekly email, and interviews rabbis, ultimately nicely, and much more than I could name. It's not that Wendy isn't a shul person, but that the definition of shul person has to expand to include Wendy, and the shul is better off for it. In her book, Lean In, Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg says that Mark Zuckerberg told her that if you're not getting people angry with you, you're not really doing your job. Real progress requires more sharpness than polite types like myself are usually willing to admit. Wendy is intelligent, she is funny, she's profane, she is sharp, she is dogged, she is dedicated, she is honest, and a chip off the old expletive deleted block. These qualities land her on the wrong side of more than a few people, some of whom are probably in this room squirming through this speech. But that's okay. Because though it's a worthy goal, and is eloquently stated just a moment ago with love and with respect by Lester, I don't know that Wendy would have taken this honor if it would have been called an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, but she is that, and she is, as her colleagues at the table are, a woman of inspiration. She is fully dedicated to helping this community become a better place and to achieve its potential. She is a lovely person and a good friend. And I can say with some confidence that it is hard for me to conceive of a scenario where I would be here in Hamilton if Wendy were not also here. And it is my honor and privilege to work with and to introduce Wendy Schneider.
Thank you, Rabbi Dan. That was great. Thank you to my fellow honorees. It's wonderful to share the podium with you tonight. I have nothing but the deepest respect for each one of you. And thank you to Naamat. I'm going to say more about Naamat as I progress, but I just want to say that I know how much work went into making this evening happen. And as always, you've done an amazing job. Thank you to Beth Jacob, my shul, for hosting this event and playing your part in making tonight such a beautiful evening. So I've decided to rearrange my entire speech as I was sitting out there, so I hope it still comes together. But before I start, I'd like to say that I'd like to dedicate my remarks tonight to the memory of Rivka Shafir, whose integrity and devotion to both Naamat and generations of Hamilton Hebrew Academy students, and her extraordinary courage in the face of adversity, made her, for us at Naamat, a woman of inspiration unlike any other. Rivka's passing just over 2 years ago left us bereft of a dear friend, but I feel her presence here tonight. So many of you know that I'm a yoga person, and last year I came across this book that really spoke to me, and it's called The Great Work of Your Life. And it was written by Stephen Cope, who is a psychotherapist and a senior yoga teacher at the Kripalu Center in Massachusetts. And the book is about Dharma. Dharma is the concept that within every human soul lies an inner possibility, and that it's our sacred duty to live up to this possibility through dedicating our unique gifts in service to the world. Cope observes that the most fulfilled people are those whose efforts are directed towards a compelling activity for which they have a true calling. As soon as I read this concept in his book, it really spoke to me because my life has been about collaboration. So if I take Naamat, for example, what makes our group work so well is that everybody is involved in doing the things they really excel at for the greater good, to make something like an evening like this happen. So, for instance, if I had been working on an evening like tonight, which I wasn't, I would not be in the kitchen. I would be cleaning up. And the same holds true, of course, for Beth Jacob, where we have exceptional individuals like Hannah Shire in the office, our executive director, and Cindy Richter, our president, and Rabbi Dan, and Maureen Price in the office, and Philip Price doing his thing in shul as handing out the honors, and so many more. Everybody doing the thing that they A, love, B, they're good at. And when you get that happening, with everybody contributing, then you get something magnificent like what's happened in this shul. And that's why I don't answer the phones at Beth Jacob. So, I do the emails, I don't answer the phones. This is the important thing, the magic of life is when people are doing the thing that they're really good at. And I think that's pretty much the essence of what I want to say tonight. And now I'd like to tell you a story about my daughter. When my eldest daughter, Hillary, was 12 years old, I took her and her 3 sisters on a drive to a Hagersville horse farm to follow up on a lead called into the Hamilton Jewish News about Israeli-bred Arabian horses. The day stands out in my memory because of the transformation I witnessed in Hillary during a conversation with a young intern who shared with us that she had studied equine science at Olds College in Alberta. In that moment, Hillary's eyes lit up and her whole being became infused with an aliveness I had never seen in her before, as if something deep inside was proclaiming, yes, this will be my path. I've always thought of that moment as Hillary's awakening to herself. So I had an awakening too, and mine happened when I was 17 years old, and I went to Israel for the very first time. The summer of 1971 stands out in my memory because, like Hillary, I experienced an instantaneous internal transformation from the moment our plane landed. Never before had I felt so fully alive, so filled with joy, and so at home in the world. But how we connect the dots between that first moment of awakening to our gift, to finding the work we are meant to do in the world, is rarely straightforward, and the path is often obscured by unanticipated roadblocks and by struggle. So in 1983, I felt at a crossroads and as if I was facing an uncertain future, because since the age of 17, I had carried the dream of Israel in my heart, and yet here I was, back in my hometown, with husband and baby, living in close proximity to my parents, and wondering what on earth life had in store for me. The answer was 3 more beautiful children and a very full life. But how to reconcile my yearning for Israel with my life as it was unfolding was a mystery, until I found Na'amat. Na'amat not only became my Israel touchstone because of my growing friendships with a remarkable group of like-minded women, but through our bringing Jewish and Israeli-themed cultural programming to Hamilton, it fed and it fueled my creative urges and helped me feel more connected to the deepest part of myself. And still, a sense of purpose eluded me. It took another decade for that to happen, and when it did, the depth of fulfillment was more than anything I could have imagined or wished for. The only words I have to describe the last 19 years of editing the Hamilton Jewish News are labor of love. Documenting the lives and the stories that make up the tapestry of Jewish Hamilton is as deeply compelling as anything I've ever done, and I owe the Hamilton Jewish Federation a debt of gratitude for making it possible. This could have been the end of my story, but in 2005, I would get a phone call that would rock my world, pull me out of my comfort zone, and teach me the true meaning of sacred duty. The phone call was from my cousin John, who had just had his own version of an awakening. John was calling to ask if I would work with him in getting Beth Jacob back on track. I told him I wasn't interested. I had ended my association with the shul years earlier, and like many in the community at that time, I figured its days were numbered. But John made a compelling case that as fourth generation Beth Jacob members, he and I had a responsibility to, at the very least, give it our best shot. John was speaking the language of Dharma. And by the end of the call, I told him, I'm in. Our 5-year co-presidency was as challenging as anything I had undertaken, and yet, working so closely with people like John, with Mark Scholes, Rabbi Dan, with Karen, and seeing so many dedicated, hardworking congregants come forward to help with the renewal process made it a rich and deeply rewarding experience. I still have to pinch myself sometimes over the fact that we managed to attract a rabbi of the caliber of Rabbi Selsberg, that the community came together to make the shul within a shul a reality, that our recent 125th anniversary celebration was such a huge success, and that exceptional people like Hannah and Cindy and our very hardworking executive committee and volunteers like Maureen and Philip and my friend Milt Lewis and so many more are doing whatever it takes to keep the momentum going. In the end, John was right. Emulating the values of our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents was something worth striving for. I am deeply and everlastingly thankful for my father, Marvin, whose generosity, like that of his father and his grandfather, knew no bounds. For my mother, the late Lillian Goldblatt, the epitome of graciousness and beauty. For my sisters, Michael Sue, Beverly, and Janet, who are here tonight, except for Michael Sue because she couldn't be last minute, but really wanted to. Can I say what? Her son eloped. She flew out to San Francisco. They waited for her. Who, despite no longer living in Hamilton, my sisters have maintained their loyalty and respect for a synagogue and a community so tied to our family's history. I'm grateful for my grandfather, Frank, an exceptionally kind and gentle man, and for my grandmother, Dolly, whose individuality and feistiness had such a strong influence on all of her grandchildren. Above all, I'm thankful for the family that Lori and I created together. How my 26-year-old self knew that marrying Lori Schneider was going to be the wisest decision I ever made is, for me, one of life's greatest mysteries. Lori, a leader in his own right, has always demonstrated unwavering devotion to me, to our children, to his sister and her family, and to our friends. He is courageous, fiercely honest with himself and others, and the very embodiment of integrity. I think the greatest gift that Lori and I have given our children is our shared conviction that following your heart's deepest desire is always the right choice. Hillary followed her heart and is now living her dream in Ladner, BC, where she facilitates equine-assisted therapy. And we're so proud of Becca, of Tanya, who delayed her move out west to be here tonight, and to Emily, and of Emily, all of whom are charting their own paths on their journeys of the heart. I'd like to close with a quote by Thomas Merton, a 20th century monk who struggled through his whole life with his longing to be considered a great author. This comes, by the way, via Stephen Cope. We cannot achieve greatness, he says, unless we lose all interest in being great. It is therefore a very great thing to be little, which is to say, to be ourselves. Our task then, says Stephen Cope, is to poke away systematically at our little callings. We do not have to exhaust ourselves with great acts. We just have to show up and then let it go. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Wendy. I think you will all agree that we've had a very special evening tonight, and we've honored 4 remarkable women. I would also like to thank all the women of Nahmat Hamilton whose hard work and enthusiasm made this evening possible. I would especially like to thank the co-chairs of this evening, Gilda Ennis and Susan Roth. And I'm here. I invite Gilda and Susan to come up and present a memento of this evening to each of our honorees.
I'd like to call up Lorraine. On behalf of Nahmat, we're giving Lorraine a plaque, thanking her for being a woman of inspiration.
Thank you.
And I just want to tell you that I looked up what Akela is. Akela is something that Lorraine was up in the Arctic. And Akela means leader. It also means wisdom. And I thank you for bringing those skills to our community and being a leader for us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And this is for you, Lorraine.
Thank you so much.
And I have the honor of calling up Susan. So thank you very much. I'm giving this plaque to you on behalf of Nahmat. And truly you are a very passionate person and a passionate volunteer and passionate leader in education at McMaster. So thank you very much for sharing. And this is for you. Thank you.
Carol?
To my dear friend Carol, my CEO, I am so proud of you. You are so deserving of this recognition. Carol Crames, a woman of inspiration who through her endless devotion to social services enhances the lives of so many in need. Of course, you all agree. So proud of you. That's for you, not me. Wendy? To my good friend and my biking partner, you are so deserving. You have done so much to the community, and we appreciate it so much, despite you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for supporting all our honorees tonight and Nahmat Canada. Please enjoy coffee, tea, and our homemade desserts, which will be served at your table. Good evening.